Tonight, you are going to hear something that most people never stop to think about. 8 other versions of you once walked this earth. Not aliens, not myths, not creatures from some fantasy story. Real people. People with hands and fires and children and grief. People who buried their dead and painted caves and looked up at the same stars you look up at tonight. And every single one of them is gone. Not in some distant galaxy. Not in another universe. Right here, on this ground, in these forests. Beside these rivers, they breathed the same air. They felt the same cold. They watched the same sun set behind the same mountains. And then, one by one, they disappeared. Tonight we go looking for them. If you are watching this, in the dark, if you have your headphones in, and the world outside is quiet, then you are in exactly the right place. This is a long, slow journey. We are going back hundreds of thousands of years, to a world so different from ours that it feels like a dream. A world where the forests were full of footsteps that were almost human, where fires burned on hilltops left by hands that were not quite like yours, where there were many kinds of people and the earth was shared. Before we begin, if this kind of story moves you, if it makes you feel something quiet and deep, please subscribe. There are more journeys like this one waiting for you here. And when this video finishes, leave a comment and tell me which of these lost species stayed with you the longest. I read every single one now. Let us go back. Let us go all the way back to a time before history, before writing, before cities, before roads or borders or names for things. Back to when the world was wide and wild and full of possibilities we can barely imagine now. Take a slow breath. Let your body settle. There is nowhere to be tonight. Nowhere at all. The story starts in the dark. Chapter 1. A world with more than one kind of human. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a forest, not a forest you have ever seen. This one is older, thicker. The trees are wider than houses. The air smells of wet soil and pine and something else. Something wild and alive that has no name in any modern language. The sky above you is the same deep blue-black it has always been. The stars are the same stars, but everything beneath them is different. It is roughly 300,000 years ago. You are in what we would one day call Africa, but the continent looks nothing like any map you have ever studied. The grasslands stretch for distances that seem impossible. Rivers cut through red earth. Volcanoes smoke on distant horizons, and scattered across this vast, ancient world, in small groups of 10 or 20 or 30, there are people. Not just one kind of people, many kinds. This is the thing that most of us never fully absorb. We live today in a world where there is only one human species. Us, Homo sapiens. We are the only kind of human left. When we look at another person, no matter where they are from or what they look like, they are the same species as us. Exactly the same. This feels so normal that we never question it. But it was not always this way. For most of the last 2 million years, the Earth carried multiple human species at the same time. Some estimates say at least 8 species of human were alive during the period when our ancestors first appeared. Some say more. Scientists are still finding new ones. In 2003, a tiny skeleton was pulled from a cave on the island of Flores, in Indonesia, and it turned out to be an entirely different human species that nobody had ever seen before. In 2010, a fragment of a finger bone from a cave in Siberia revealed the existence of yet another species. One so recently discovered that we are still learning what they look like. The world of deep human history is not the simple story of one species slowly improving and marching forward. It is a much stranger, wilder, more beautiful story than that. It is a story of cousins and neighbours and strangers who sometimes met, sometimes competed, sometimes loved each other across the boundaries of species. It is a story of loss, of survival, of deep, quiet mystery, and it is the story of why you are here tonight, and why they are not. Let the forest around you settle. The wind moves through the high branches. Somewhere far away, something calls out in the dark. You cannot name it. That is fine. In this world, most things do not yet have names. We are just beginning. Chapter 2. Before the beginning. What we mean by human. Before we meet each of our lost cousins, we need to understand something important. Something simple, but easy to miss. What do we mean when we say human? It is a harder question than it sounds. Scientists use the word hominin to describe the group that includes us and all our closest relatives. Think of it like a family tree. At the very base of the tree, millions of years ago, our ancestors split away from the ancestors of chimpanzees. From that split, a long line of different species grew. Some of them walked upright. Some of them made tools. Some of them had big brains. Some of them buried their dead. Different species had different combinations of these traits. Not all of them had all of them. We tend to imagine evolution as a straight line, a chain of beings getting slowly more and more like us, step by step until we arrive. But that is not how it worked. Evolution is more like a bush than a ladder. Branches grow in every direction. Some branches thrive and spread. Others end. The ones that ended are not failures. They are simply other paths, other stories, other ways of being alive in a world that was constantly changing. The genus Homo, which is the group that includes all the species we will talk about tonight, first appeared roughly 2 to 3 million years ago. The earliest members of this group, like Homo habilis, were small and ape-like in many ways, but they were doing something no other creature had done before. They were making tools, deliberately shaped stones, crude, yes, simple, yes, but intentional. The beginning of something. Over millions of years, these early humans spread. They moved out of Africa. They walked into Asia. They crossed into Europe. They adapted to cold mountains and hot deserts and dense rainforests and icy plains. Each population faced different pressures, different climates, different challenges, and slowly, over tens of thousands of generations, different groups became different species. Not all at once, not in any dramatic moment, gradually, quietly, the way all the deepest changes happen. By the time our species, Homo sapiens, appeared around 300,000 years ago, there were already other human species living on this planet, who had been here for much longer than us. Think about that for a moment. We were the newcomers. The night is quiet around you. Your breathing is slower now. The forest is still, somewhere in the deep past in a world we can barely picture. The first people who looked like you were finding their first fires, learning their first words, making their first marks on rock and bone. And they were not alone. Chapter 3. The ones who came before us. Homo erectus let us meet the first of our lost cousins, the oldest. The one who, in many ways, made everything else possible. Picture a wide, flat plain in what is now East Africa. The sun is low and orange, painting the tall grass gold. A small group of people is moving across the land. They walk upright, easily, with a stride that looks very much like ours. They are taller than you might expect. Long-limbed, lean. Built for covering distance. Built for a world where survival meant moving, searching, following the animals and the seasons across vast landscapes. These are Homo erectus, and they are remarkable. Homo erectus appeared roughly 2 million years ago, which makes them one of the oldest members of the Homo family, and they survived for an almost incomprehensible amount of time, while our own species, Homo sapiens, has existed for around 300,000 years. Homo erectus walked this earth for nearly 2 million years. They outlasted ice ages. They outlasted volcanic winters. They outlasted shifts in climate that would have been catastrophic for any other species. They were, by almost any measure, one of the most successful human species that ever lived. They were the first human species to leave Africa. They walked across the Middle East and into Asia, spreading across a range that eventually stretched from the shores of what is now Europe all the way to the island of Java in Southeast Asia. They crossed deserts and mountains and rivers, carrying their stone tools and their knowledge of fire into landscapes no human had ever entered before. And fire. Let us talk about fire for a moment. Homo erectus may have been the first human species to consistently control fire. The evidence is not perfect. Science rarely gives us perfect answers for things this old, but in caves in South Africa, in sites dating back nearly 1 million years, there are burned bones and ash deposits that suggest someone was deliberately keeping flames alive. Imagine what that meant in a dark world, in the cold, in the vast and indifferent wild. Here were people keeping a small piece of the sun, tending it, feeding it, sharing its warmth. That is not a small thing. That is one of the most important moments in the history of life on this planet. Homo erectus also made what archaeologists call Acheulean tools. These are teardrop-shaped stone hand axes, carefully shaped on both sides, with a symmetry and a precision that goes beyond mere usefulness. Someone looked at a stone and imagined a shape inside it. Then they worked, patiently, strike by careful strike, until the shape emerged. That requires planning. It requires holding an image in your mind while your hands work toward it. It is, in a very real sense, a form of thinking ahead, a form of imagination. We do not know if Homo erectus had language the way we do. Their anatomy suggests their vocal abilities were more limited than ours. But they communicated, they coordinated, they taught each other. You do not raise children in a group. You do not hunt large animals together. You do not tend fire through a long night without some form of shared understanding, some form of meaning passed between people, some version, however simple, of the thing that eventually became language, story, memory. Homo erectus lived on this earth until roughly 117,000 years ago. Some estimates push that even later, suggesting small populations may have survived in isolated pockets of Southeast Asia even more recently than that. For most of the time that our own species has existed, there were Homo erectus alive somewhere on this planet. We never knew them, but they were there. The plain is fading now. The orange sun sinks below the grass. The group of long-limbed walkers disappears into the distance. Their footprints in the soft earth are deep and clear, and then slowly the wind smooths the ground, and they are gone. Let us drift a little further forward in time. Chapter 4. The Hobbits of Flores. Homo floresiensis. There is an island in the middle of the Indonesian archipelago, a small island, dramatic and green, wrapped in jungle, with rivers that cut through limestone cliffs and caves, so deep that their interiors have barely been explored. The island is called Flores, and in 2003 on that island, archaeologists crawled into a cave called Liang Bua and found something that changed everything. Scientists thought they understood about human evolution. They found a skeleton, a complete one, which is rare, and it was tiny. The adult individual they found stood just over 1 meter tall, about 3.5 feet. The brain inside the skull was roughly the size of an orange, about 1/3 of the size of a modern human brain. The teeth were small, the face was flat. The body, when reconstructed, looked ancient in ways that reminded scientists less of us, and more of much older hominins from millions of years ago. But this creature had not lived millions of years ago. It had lived around 50,000 years ago, maybe even more recently. The scientific community was divided, then fascinated, then convinced. This was not a diseased modern human. This was not a child. This was an adult member of an entirely separate human species, a species that had been living on this remote island in isolation, evolving along its own path for hundreds of thousands of years. They named it Homo floresiensis, but almost immediately, researchers and journalists gave it another name. The Hobbit. It is not a bad nickname. These small people lived in a world that seems, to our modern minds, almost mythological. The island of Flores was in prehistoric times home to giant storks, to elephant-like animals called dwarf stegodons, miniaturized versions of mainland elephants that had evolved smaller bodies over thousands of years, to giant rats, to Komodo dragons. It was a world that followed its own rules, shaped by isolation and the strange pressures of island life. And the hobbits thrived in this world. Despite their tiny brains, despite their small bodies, they made stone tools. They hunted. They used fire. The evidence shows organized, cooperative behavior. They may have lived in this cave, or used it for shelter, for hundreds of thousands of years. How did they get there? The most likely answer is that they were descended from Homo erectus, the great walkers we met just a moment ago. Some population of Homo erectus must have reached Flores at some point, perhaps crossing water on rafts or natural debris, perhaps during a time when sea levels were lower and islands were closer together. Once there, isolated from the mainland, they evolved in their own direction. Dwarfism is actually common on islands. When resources are limited and predators are few, smaller bodies require less food, and over many generations the population shrinks. The hobbits were not failed humans. They were successful island humans, perfectly adapted to their specific world. They disappeared around 50,000 years ago. The timing overlaps with the arrival of Homo sapiens in Southeast Asia. It also overlaps with a major volcanic eruption on Flores. We do not know exactly what ended them. We may never know, but the silence in that cave, after all those hundreds of thousands of years of small fires and stone tools, tells its own quiet story. They had a whole world on that small island, and then they were gone. For a moment, just breathe. Let the image of that jungle island settle in your mind. The green trees, the strange animals, of golden daffodils, the small people moving through the undergrowth, living their lives, raising their children, and knowing nothing of the world beyond the sea. There is something very peaceful about that if you let it be. Chapter 5. The Ghost People. Homo Denisova. Now we move to a cave on the other side of the world. A cave in the cold mountains of Siberia, in southern Russia, near the border of Mongolia. The mountains are called the Altai Mountains. They are beautiful and remote, covered in snow for much of the year, with pine forests and rushing rivers and skies that stretch forever. The cave is called Denisova Cave. In 2008, archaeologists working in this cave found something tiny, barely worth noting. A fragment of bone from the tip of a small finger. The bone was so small and so worn that it could have been overlooked. But they sent it for analysis, and the DNA inside that tiny fragment rewrote human history. The DNA did not match Homo sapiens. It did not match Neanderthals. It was something else entirely. A new species. A species that had never been described before. A species whose existence we had not even suspected until that single fragment of a child's finger was analysed in a laboratory in Leipzig, Germany. They called them Denisovans, and they are, in many ways, the most mysterious of all our lost cousins. We have found almost nothing of them in terms of physical remains. A finger bone, a few teeth, a partial jawbone found in Tibet, a fragment of skull. That is almost everything we have. We cannot fully reconstruct their faces. We cannot know their height or their build. With anything like the certainty we have for Neanderthals, in terms of bones and stones and physical traces, the Denisovans are almost invisible, but their DNA speaks, and it says extraordinary things. The Denisovans were a distinct human species that split from the Neanderthal lineage somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000 years ago. They lived across a vast range from Siberia all the way across Asia, possibly into Southeast Asia and the Pacific. They were alive from at least 285,000 years ago until around 30,000 years ago, possibly later. And here is the detail that keeps scientists up at night in the best possible way. The DNA of living people in Melanesia, the islands north of Australia, contains up to 5% Denisovan DNA. Aboriginal Australians, Pacific Islanders, and some populations in Southeast Asia carry measurable amounts of Denisovan genetic material inside them. This means our ancestors did not just encounter the Denisovans. They lived alongside them. They had children with them. The Denisovans, in a very real sense, did not fully disappear. A piece of them lives on in real people. Today, one of the Denisovan genes that survives in modern humans is a gene that helps people living at high altitudes cope with low oxygen levels. This gene is found in Tibetan people today, and it makes high-altitude life possible in ways that would otherwise be physiologically difficult. The Denisovans, who lived in the high, cold mountains of Tibet, carried this adaptation. They passed it to our ancestors, and it is still working, still keeping people alive on the roof of the world, still protecting lungs and hearts in thin mountain air. The Denisovans are gone, but they left something behind that still breathes. The cave in the Altai Mountains is cold tonight. The stars above it are sharp and close in the thin mountain air. Inside the cave there is only silence and old stone, but once, around a fire in this same dark space, there were people. People who had learned the secrets of altitude. People who lived in one of the harshest environments on Earth and made it home. We do not know their stories. We do not know their names for things. We do not know what they dreamed or feared or loved, but their biology persists in millions of living people, quiet and faithful, doing its work without fanfare, carrying forward a piece of a world that no longer exists. Let us stay here for a moment, in the cold and the quiet of that ancient mountain. Your breath is slow, the air around you is still, the night is deepening. There is no rush to go anywhere. The story will wait for you. Patient as a mountain, patient as old stone, the world turns slowly, and so do we. We have met 3 of our lost cousins tonight. Homo erectus, the great walkers who carried fire across a continent. Homo floresiensis, the small people of the island who lived in their own perfect world. And the Denisovans, the ghost people, whose DNA still breathes inside living humans. We met 3 of our lost cousins, Homo erectus, the great travellers, Homo floresiensis, the small island people of Flores, and the Denisovans, the ghost people whose DNA still rides in the blood of millions of living humans. Now, we move closer in time, we step into a colder world. We step into Europe and Western Asia during the Ice Age. We are going to meet the most famous of all the other humans, the people we once called cavemen. Chapter 6. Imagine you wake in a Neanderthal night. Imagine you are waking up in the dark, not in your room, not in your bed. You wake up on a bed of dry grass and skins. The air is cold, and your breath steams faintly as you exhale. You can smell smoke. You can smell earth. You can smell animal fat cooling on stone. You open your eyes and the first thing you see is rock, the rough, curving walls of a cave lit by the low glow of a fire that has burned all night. Outside, the wind is moving over snow. You sit up a little. Your body feels heavy and strong. The ceiling of the cave is low, and you duck your head without thinking. A few meters away, a small fire is still alive. The wood collapsed into glowing orange coals. A figure is sitting there, shoulders broad, back turned, feeding the fire with small sticks. When they turn toward you, you see a face that is almost human in the way you are used to. And yet not quite. The brow is heavy and long. The nose is big, wide, built to warm cold air before it reaches the lungs. The skull is longer from front to back. The body is shorter than yours, but much more powerful. Thick arms, deep chest, stocky legs made for life in the cold. But the eyes are human. They are tired and kind, and when they meet yours, something passes between you that does not need words. This is a Neanderthal, or, in more exact scientific language, a member of the species Homo neanderthalensis. They lived in Europe and southwestern to Central Asia, from about 400,000 years ago to about 40,000 years ago. They are not your ancestors in a direct line. They are your cousins. Their branch and our branch split from a common ancestor, somewhere between 700,000 and 300,000 years ago. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals evolved in Europe and Western Asia, adapting to cold climates, to mammoth grasslands and icy winds and dark, long winters. We, Homo sapiens, evolved in Africa. Different continents, different environments, different paths. But for tens of thousands of years, those paths crossed. The fire in the cave cracks. The Neanderthal at the fire feeds it again. Outside, the night is very still. Inside, the air is warm around the flames and cold at your back. You pull the skin up around your shoulders and listen to the soft sound of other people breathing in the shadows. This was home for them. Chapter 7. Who the Neanderthals really were. For a long time, people told a very simple story about Neanderthals. They said Neanderthals were slow, clumsy, stupid, brutish. They said Neanderthals could not speak or think like us. They drew cartoons of heavy-browed, hairy men dragging clubs. That story was wrong. The more we learn about Neanderthals, the more we discover how deeply human they were. Not in some romantic, wishful way, but in a practical, scientific way. Their bodies were different from ours. Their faces were different. Their voices probably sounded different. But their brains were as large as ours, and often larger. They made complex tools. They hunted large animals. They used fire. They made and wore clothing. They built shelters. They cared for their sick. They buried their dead. And they may have made art. Let us move slowly through those details. Neanderthals made a diverse set of tools. They worked stone into blades, scrapers, points. They shaped bone and wood. They used these tools to hunt and to process animal hides, to cut meat, to scrape fat. Some tools are so well shaped and specialized that they show careful planning and skill. This is not clumsy work. This is fine craft, learned and passed down. They were skilled hunters. They killed large animals like mammoths and woolly rhinoceroses and bison. They hunted in groups. This required planning and cooperation. It required a shared understanding of risk and reward. It required communication. They also gathered and ate plants, seeds, nuts, fruits when available. They were not just meat eaters. Recent studies of plaque on Neanderthal teeth have found traces of cooked plant material, suggesting they used fire to soften and prepare food. This means they understood something subtle, that heat could transform food, make it easier to chew, easier to digest, safer. They lived in shelters, sometimes caves, sometimes rock overhangs, sometimes structures built from wood and animal bones. They made and wore clothing. You do not survive in Ice Age Europe without some kind of protective layer. They controlled fire. They carried it. They tended it. They relied on it for warmth, for light, for safety from predators, for cooking. The fire you imagined just a moment ago in that cave is not a romantic addition. It is a realistic image of Neanderthal life. And then there is something even more intimate. Neanderthals cared for their weak and injured. In several skeletons, scientists have found healed fractures and serious injuries that would have left the person unable to hunt or gather food for long periods. Yet these people lived long enough for the bones to heal. This means others fed them, protected them, helped them. That is not a simple survival instinct. That is social care. That is tenderness in whatever form it took. There is also evidence that Neanderthals buried their dead. In some sites, bodies are found in positions that suggest deliberate placement in pits. There are hints of grave goods, things placed with the body. In one famous case, pollen patterns around a Neanderthal skeleton suggest that flowers may have been laid upon the grave. This idea is debated. Science is careful, and conclusions are always tested and retested. But even the possibility evokes something soft, something familiar. We do not know what Neanderthals believed. We do not know if they had myths or stories of an afterlife. But the act of burial, of taking the time and effort and energy to place a body in the earth carefully, tells us that death had meaning for them. It was not just something that happened and was ignored. It was something that required action. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 8. You stand beside. A Neanderthal. Imagine a wide open valley somewhere in Europe, about 50,000 years ago. The last ice age is deepening. Glaciers grind across northern lands. But here in this valley the ground is bare. Low, tough plants cover the soil. The sky is pale and hard. The air is sharp in your lungs when you breathe. Herds of animals move slowly across the land. Mammoths with long curved tusks, shaggy bison, reindeer with heavy antlers. You are not alone. To your left, a Neanderthal stands, watching the herd. They are shorter than you, but heavy with muscle, wrapped in hides. Their breath steams in the cold. Their hair is tied back with a strip of leather. In their hand is a spear carefully shaped. The tip a long stone point fixed with sinew. Behind you a small group of Homo sapiens stands, your own species. They are leaner, their faces shaped more like the ones you see around you today, with higher foreheads and lighter brows. Their clothing is stitched from hides. Some of them carry spears like the Neanderthal. Some carry lighter throwing weapons. They are nervous and alert. But there is no clear line between your group and the Neanderthal. People speak in low voices. A joke passes between two of them, and the Neanderthal smiles. For tens of thousands of years this scene was possible. Our species and Neanderthals overlapped in Europe and Western Asia for somewhere between 30,000 and 50,000 years. They inhabited the same regions. They hunted the same animals. They sometimes used the same caves at different times. Some sites show layers of Neanderthal occupation capped by layers of Homo sapiens occupation, or the other way around. In Northern Europe, new genetic evidence from central Germany shows that Homo sapiens had reached the region around 45,000 years ago, overlapping with Neanderthals before Neanderthals went extinct. The most logical conclusion is that there were times and places where we met. What happened when we did? It is easy to imagine only conflict, battles, competition, and there was likely some of that. Both species needed food, both needed shelter, both hunted large animals. When two predators occupy the same niche, there is pressure, but there is also evidence of something softer. Genetic studies of modern non-African humans show that between 1 and 2% of their DNA comes from Neanderthals. This means that our species and Neanderthals had children together, not once or twice, but many times across thousands of years. They did not just meet, they mixed. Some of the Neanderthal DNA that remains in us seems to help with immunity, the body's ability to fight off disease. Neanderthal genes may have given our ancestors an advantage in new environments. Pieces of their legacy still work quietly in human bodies today, protecting us in ways we barely notice. So picture this valley again. Some nights the group stayed apart. Fires on different hills, stories in different languages, songs in different rhythms. But maybe on some nights they shared warmth. Maybe a young woman from one group found herself talking, haltingly, with a young man from the other, exchanging gestures, sounds, laughs. Maybe a child grew up in a family where some people looked a little more like you, and some looked a little more like the Neanderthal by the fire. We cannot prove the details, but the genes in our bloods say that something like this happened. The Neanderthals were not just competitors. They were also family in a deep and complicated way. If your eyes feel a little heavy, that is fine. For a moment, just breathe. You do not need to keep track of all the dates. Just hold this one simple idea. There was a time when you could have walked through a valley and seen more than one kind of human standing in the snow. The world turned slowly, and so do we. Chapter 9. The Vanishing of Neanderthals. Neanderthals are gone now. All traces of them in the fossil record disappear by around 40,000 years ago. Maybe a little later in a few small areas. Their last strongholds seem to have been places in Western Europe and nearby regions. Then suddenly they are not there anymore. No more bones in the layers above, no more tools, no more traces of their fires. For a long time, people told a simple story about why. They said, "We came, we were smarter, we replaced them." They imagined wars between species, dramatic clashes, Neanderthals falling before clever, modern humans like a wave before the shore. Again, the simple story is probably wrong. The truth is likely softer, slower, more complex. Several factors may have contributed. Climate was changing. The last ice age brought new pressures. Environments shifted. Animal populations moved or declined. For a species already adapted to a specific range, this would have been hard. Our species, Homo sapiens, brought something else into the mix. Extreme flexibility. We were better at long-distance networks, trading and exchanging goods and ideas between groups. We may have had more complex language, allowing us to pass information with great detail. Our tools were changing quickly, with new kinds of blade technology spreading across regions. Wherever we went, we altered the balance. And then there is the matter of numbers. If our populations grew faster, if we ranged more widely, if we filled the landscape more densely, then Neanderthals would have had fewer and fewer places where they could live without competition. They might have been pushed into smaller regions, more marginal habitats, where survival was already hard. Interbreeding may also have played a role. When our species and Neanderthals had children, those children would, in some cases, have been raised in Homo sapiens groups. Over time, this could have pulled Neanderthal genes into our population, while their own populations shrank. In a way, part of them was absorbed rather than erased. But we must be careful. Even the best science cannot yet tell us exactly how they disappeared. There is no single clear smoking gun, no final battle, no sudden disaster that destroyed every Neanderthal at once. Their end was likely a slow fade. Fewer children, fewer successful births, smaller home ranges, a series of winters just a little too hard, a series of summers just a little too dry, a gradual emptying. One generation, there are Neanderthal fires dotting the hills. 1,000 years later, there are fewer. 1,000 years after that, maybe only a handful of small groups remain, scattered in pockets of forest and mountain. And then at last there is a night when the last Neanderthal anywhere on Earth lies down, breathes out, and does not breathe in again. The fire they tended burns down, unattended into ash, and that is it. The Earth is just as wide. The stars are just as cold. The animals still move across the land, but a way of being human, a whole style of body and brain and memory, is gone forever. When we talk about Neanderthals disappearing, we are not talking about monsters dying out. We are talking about people. Let that sit with you for a moment. Their story is part of your story. Chapter 10. A new kind of mystery. Homo naledi. Now we turn away from the ice and head back for a moment to Africa, to a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star, to a different kind of human, one that complicates the story even more. Imagine crawling. The passage ahead of you is narrow, just wide enough for your shoulders if you turn them sideways. The rock is cool and smooth where countless hands and knees have brushed against it. Your headlamp throws a small circle of light on the stone. Air moves slowly past your face, smelling faintly of dust and age. This is not a place of open fire circles and sweeping views. This is a place of tight turns and sudden drops. A labyrinth underground. It was here in 2013 that scientists found the remains of a previously unknown human species, a species they named Homo naledi. Homo naledi is strange. Their bodies are a mix of old and new features. Their hands and feet are very similar to ours. Their wrists show adaptations for tool use. Their feet suggest they were good walkers, but their shoulders and chest are more primitive, more like earlier hominins. Their brains were small, much smaller than ours, closer in size to the brains of Homo habilis, or even earlier species. For a while, nobody knew how old they were. If they were very ancient, perhaps they were just another early branch that ended long before our species appeared. But then the dates came back. Homo naledi lived between about 236,000 and 335,000 years ago. That means they were alive at the same time as early Homo sapiens. In Africa, in the same broad region, small-brained, strange-bodied humans living alongside big-brained, modern-bodied humans. That alone is startling. It means that brain size alone is not the simple key to understanding human success. It means that different kinds of humans were experimenting with different ways of being alive at the same time. But there is more. The remains of Homo naledi were found deep within the cave system, in chambers that are very hard to reach. There is no evidence that these bones were brought there by water or falling rock. There are no marks of animals dragging bodies there. In some chambers, the skeletons are found in positions that suggest they were placed there deliberately. Some scientists argue that this is evidence of deliberate burial, that Homo naledi, with their small brains, carried their dead deep into the cave and placed them in hidden chambers, again and again, over generations. If true, this would make them the oldest known humans to practice burial, older even than the earliest Homo sapiens burials. It would mean that complex thoughts about death and ritual were not limited to big-brained species like us. Other scientists are cautious. They say the evidence is not yet strong enough. They point out that caves are tricky places, and that natural processes can sometimes arrange bones in ways that look intentional. They urge us to wait for more data. The debate is ongoing. It may continue for many years. But whether or not Homo naledi buried their dead, their existence alone tells us something powerful. It tells us that our deep past was not a simple ladder. It was a crowded world, full of different experiments in being human. Some tall, some small. Some long-headed, some round-headed. Some with brain cases like ours. Some with much smaller ones. Some living on islands. Some in ice. Some in forests. Some in caves. So deep we are still learning how to reach them. The Rising Star cave system holds bones that sat in the dark for hundreds of thousands of years before we found them. In that time, entire ice ages came and went. Rivers shifted, mountains wore down, seas rose and fell, and still, down there, in the perfect dark, the silent bones of Homo naledi waited. You can almost feel that stillness if you let your mind go there. The feeling of being far underground, surrounded by stone, knowing that above you, on the surface, the entire human story is unwinding, and below you, in tiny chambers, are traces of other people, other stories, other lives. For a moment, just breathe. Notice the rise and fall of your chest. Let your jaw unclench if it has tightened. There is no need to solve any puzzle tonight. It is enough to know that the story is bigger than we were taught. Chapter 11. A tiny human from another island. Homo luzonensis. We leave the caves of South Africa and move again to an island, this time in the Philippines. The island is called Luzon. It is large, green, mountainous, wrapped in cloud and forest. In a cave on the side of one of these mountains, called Kalau Cave, scientists found teeth and bones that did not quite match any known species. They were small. Some features looked like very ancient hominins. Others looked more modern. Like the Hobbits of Flores, these remains suggested a tiny-bodied human species that had evolved in isolation. They named it Homo luzonensis. The fossils are few. Some teeth, some hand and foot bones, a fragment of thigh, but they are enough to show that this was a distinct species. A species that lived at least 50,000 to 67,000 years ago, in an island environment shaped by its own rules. Once again, we see the pattern of islands creating unique forms. Just as Homo floresiensis evolved into a small-bodied island human on Flores, Homo luzonensis seems to have done the same on Luzon. Separate islands, separate experiments, separate stories. We can imagine them a little from the fragments we have. Short, light, moving through dense tropical forest, feet sure on wet roots and stone. They probably used tools. They probably used fire. They may have arrived from the mainland through some accidental voyage on natural rafts, logs, and vegetation carried by currents, or during times when sea levels were lower and distances between land were shorter. Then, once on the island, they were alone. No big land predators, limited resources. Over thousands of generations, their bodies changed to fit their world. Like the Hobbits, they vanished. We do not know exactly why. Climate, volcanic activity, human arrival, or a combination of all three. But their bones in Kalau Cave whisper the same quiet message. Our species was not alone, not even in the islands, not even in the places that feel so far from the rest of the world. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 12. Our own species arrives. Now we need to bring ourselves into the story more clearly. Homo sapiens. Us. We evolved in Africa around 200 to 300,000 years ago. The earliest fossils that look clearly like us, with high rounded skulls and flat faces, come from sites like Jebel Irhoud in Morocco and Omo Kibish in Ethiopia. They show a body plan that you would recognize if you saw it walking down the street. Longer limbs, lighter builds, faces without heavy brow ridges. Our brains are not the biggest ever seen in humans. Some Neanderthals had larger brains relative to their body size, but our brains are wired in a way that seems to favor flexibility, rapid learning, and complex symbolic thought. We make tools that change quickly over time, with new styles appearing and spreading across regions. We paint on cave walls. We carve bone and ivory into shapes that have no direct use. Animals, abstract patterns, maybe spirits. We bury our dead with objects. We adorn ourselves with shells and pigments. Some of this appeared quite late, tens of thousands of years after our species first emerged. The so-called behavioral modernity did not arrive in a single burst. It unfolded slowly, in steps, in different places at different times. But the direction is clear. We leaned into symbolism. We leaned into story. We leaned into culture as a way of surviving. Around 70,000 to 100,000 years ago, small groups of Homo sapiens began to leave Africa in more permanent waves. They moved into the Middle East, into Asia, eventually into Europe. Along the way, they met other human species, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and perhaps others we have yet to discover. They interbred, they exchanged diseases, they exchanged genes, they may have exchanged ideas. By around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens is spreading across Europe. Art flourishes. We see the great cave paintings of places like Flores and Lascaux. We see carved figurines. We see bone flutes. We see evidence of complex social structures, of long-distance trade, of shared rituals. At the same time, one by one, the other human species fade from the fossil record. Homo floresiensis disappears around 50,000 years ago. Homo luzonensis is gone by somewhere around 50,000 years ago as well. Denisovans persist in Asia until at least 50,000 to 30,000 years ago, perhaps later. Then vanish as a distinct physical presence, leaving only their DNA. Neanderthals disappear from Europe and Western Asia by around 40,000 years ago. Homo naledi's last known remains are older, but they too do not persist into the later phases of the Ice Age. By the time we reach the period we call the Holocene, the last 11 or 12,000 years, the time of cities and writing and recorded history, we are alone. Only one species in the genus Homo survives, us. We live on a planet that once held many human species, but now it holds only one. That is the central fact behind everything we are talking about tonight. We once shared this planet with at least 8 other kinds of human. Now they are gone. Only we remain. As you lie there, listening, you are carrying the end of something that lasted millions of years. You are a member of the only surviving branch of a family tree that once had many limbs. The others are cut off. Their stories ended. Their paths stopped. Soon, in the next part of this story, we will look more closely at why that might have happened. We will explore ideas about what made us different. Language, cooperation, creativity, speed of change. We will ask what we gained and what we lost when we became the only humans left. But for now, let the thought be simple. You are not just a person living in a modern world. You are the last representative of a whole clan of beings that once walked this earth together. For a moment, just breathe. You do not need to draw any big lesson. You do not need to decide what it all means. Just let the image settle in your mind. Many kinds of humans moving across many kinds of landscapes under the same sun, under the same stars. The world changes slowly, even when our lives feel fast. As we move slowly to the next part of this story, hold on to this quiet idea. Our loneliness as a species is new. For most of time, we were not the only ones. And somewhere in the dust and the rock, and the DNA of living people, the others still leave their marks. Tonight we move even deeper, deeper into time, deeper into the question that sits quietly beneath this whole story. Why are we still here when all the others are gone? If you are lying there in the dark, maybe your phone is a small rectangle of light in your hand, or maybe you have already placed it beside you and you are just listening. That is enough. You do not have to focus hard. You do not have to remember every name. Just let the ideas drift past you, like slow clouds crossing a night sky. We have met many of our cousins now. Neanderthals in the ice, Denisovans in the high mountains, Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis on their islands, Homo naledi in the deep caves, and behind them, the long shadow of Homo erectus, walking across continents with fire in their hands. Now, in this part, we are going to pause and truly look at us. What exactly made our species different enough to last? What did we do that they did not? And what might we have lost along the way? Chapter 13. Standing at the centre of the family tree. Imagine you are standing in a clearing. Around you is a circle of paths, like spokes on a wheel. Each path leads away into a different kind of landscape. One path goes into snow and ice, one into jungle, one into high mountains, one into a maze of caves, one into open grasslands, one into a dry savanna. At the end of each path, if you could walk far enough, there is a different kind of human. Neanderthals in the snow, Homo floresiensis in the jungle, Denisovans on the high plateaus, Homo naledi in the caves, Homo luzonensis in the forested island hills, Homo erectus still moving slowly across their broad plains, and in the centre of the clearing, quietly breathing, is Homo sapiens. Us. We are not taller than everyone. We do not have the largest brains. We are not the strongest or the fastest. A single Neanderthal might have been stronger than almost any modern person. A Denisovan might have handled high altitudes better. A Hobbit might have moved through tangled jungle more easily. So what do we have? One answer is very simple and very deep. We change quickly, not in our bodies. Bodies change over tens of thousands of years, but in our minds, in our cultures, in our tools and stories and shared knowledge, we change at a pace that no other species could match. We are good at learning from each other. We are good at copying skills. We are good at storing knowledge outside our bodies, in spoken language, in memory, in ritual, in marks on bone and stone, and eventually on screens and in books. We have something you might call collective memory. If I learn how to shape a better spearhead, I can show you. You can show your children, they can show theirs. A single discovery can spread across many groups. A single clever idea can move from valley to valley, mountain to mountain. Tools change, tactics change, art changes. Our cultures evolve faster than our bones. Many scientists think this is one of the keys to why we survived when others did not. Our ability to share information quickly and flexibly might have given us a huge advantage in a world where climates were unstable and environments kept shifting. Imagine a long winter comes, harsher than any before. A Neanderthal group might adapt very well in their local area, but if they are isolated, if their population is small and spread thin, that knowledge might stay local. If something happens to that group, the knowledge dies with them. Now imagine, in the same winter, a Homo sapiens group struggling in another valley. They come up with a new way to store food, a better way to share meat, a ritual that keeps the group united under stress. And because they have wider networks, because they meet and trade and partner with other groups across longer distances, these ideas spread over thousands of years. That difference could mean everything. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 14. The web between us. Picture a line of fires at night. We are somewhere in Africa, maybe 100,000 years ago. On a hill, a group of Homo sapiens sits around a fire, talking in low voices. Their language is not ours, but it is rich. It has names for animals, for places, for feelings. It has ways to talk about time. Tomorrow last year, when your grandmother was young, they tell stories about the hunt, about the river, about the strange lights they once saw on the horizon, far away. In another valley, another group at another fire is talking too. They are related but distant. Maybe once every few weeks or months, small groups travel between the camps. They bring information, where the game has moved, which plants are in season, which part of the river is safe to cross. Now that the rains have come, they bring objects. A new style of blade, a shell from the coast, a coloured stone from a far-off mountain. This web of visits and exchanges is not big by our standards, but for early humans it is huge. We do not see this directly in the fossil record. We can't watch them walk between camps, but we see patterns that suggest it. Stone tools from distant sources, shells found far inland, far from the sea, similar decorative styles appearing in sites hundreds of kilometers apart. All of this points toward networks of contact. Neanderthals, by contrast, seem to have lived in smaller, more isolated groups. A study of Neanderthal genetic material suggests their populations were small and scattered, with less gene flow between groups than in Homo sapiens. A new study from 2026 even suggests that their isolated lifestyle, fewer strangers, fewer partners, fewer exchanges, may have made them more vulnerable to sudden changes. If you think of a species as a tapestry, with each individual as a thread, then our tapestry may have been more tightly woven, more threads crossing, more connections. The Neanderthal tapestry, though still strong, may have had larger gaps. When some threads broke, whole sections might have unravelled. Our web held, their web did not, and beneath all of this lies the quiet power of language. We do not know exactly how Neanderthal language sounded, or how complex it was. Their anatomy suggests they could produce a range of sounds, possibly more limited than ours, but still rich. They probably had some form of speech, but Homo sapiens seems to have taken language to another level. Syntax, grammar, the ability to talk about things that are not here, not now. The past, the future, the invisible, the ability to stack ideas inside ideas, to build shared myths and rules and plans. With this kind of language, you can coordinate hunts with precision. You can share spiritual ideas. You can agree on laws. You can pass detailed knowledge across generations. You can build social structures that are more than just immediate instinct. In a world where everything keeps shifting, that kind of flexible, detailed communication is like a new sense. Imagine seeing in colour when everyone else can only see in black and white. Chapter 15, The Quiet Killers. Climate and chance, it is tempting to say. We were smarter. They were not. That is why we survived. But science warns us not to think so simply. There is another layer. There is another layer to this story, one that has nothing to do with intelligence or virtue or worth. It has to do with climate and chance. The period when Neanderthals disappeared from Europe, around 40,000 years ago, was a time of severe climate instability. Ice core records and other data show swings between cold and slightly warmer periods, sudden cold snaps, and shifting environments. One particularly intense cold episode, sometimes linked to the Lachamp geomagnetic event, lines up closely with the timing of Neanderthal extinction in some regions. A 1,000-year cold snap might not sound like much in the scale of Earth history, but for any one group of people, it is everything. It is 10 or 20 or 40 generations of struggle. It is children growing up in scarcity, hunting grounds shifting, familiar plants vanishing, new diseases emerging. If your population is already small, if your groups are isolated, if you are finely tuned to a specific kind of environment, then a sudden shift can be deadly. Neanderthals were beautifully adapted to cold, but they may have been too specialized. When conditions changed, they may have been less able to adapt quickly than our more mobile, more networked ancestors. We also have to consider disease. When Homo sapiens moved out of Africa, we carried with us a set of germs, viruses, bacteria, parasites that we had co-evolved with. Our immune systems had learned to live with them. When we met Neanderthals and Denisovans, we may have passed some of these infections to them. Their bodies, unprepared, might have suffered far more. The same may have happened in reverse. We may have gotten sick from their local diseases. Some genetic evidence suggests that the exchange of immune system genes between species helped both sides adapt. But in the long run, one group's diseases and one group's numbers may have tipped the scales. None of this is a moral story. It is not that one species deserved to survive. Nature does not work in deserts and rewards. It works in pressures and chances, and tiny advantages that add up over time. The world turns slowly, and so do we. If your mind feels a little full, that is okay. Let some of the details fade into the background. You do not have to hold every hypothesis. Just keep this thought. Our survival may have depended on geography, weather, and germs, as much as on brains. Chapter 16. Even though the other human species are gone, they are not completely absent from the present. They left traces inside us. In Part 2, we talked about Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA in modern humans. Let's look a little more closely at that because it is one of the strangest and most intimate parts of this story. If you are a person whose ancestors come from outside of sub-Saharan Africa, between 1 and 2% of your DNA is likely Neanderthal in origin. That means that, scattered through your genome, there are little stretches of code that first evolved in a Neanderthal body, in a Neanderthal family. Perhaps 50,000 or 60,000 years ago. They may influence small things about you. How your immune system responds to certain infections, how easily you gain weight, how your skin reacts to sunlight. A study in 2023 found that some Neanderthal-derived genes affect how fast people burn calories and how their immune systems handle specific diseases. Most of these genes are neutral. Some may be slightly harmful, some may be beneficial. Overall, over many generations, our own Homo sapiens genes have tended to win out, slowly replacing many Neanderthal versions. But a few Neanderthal contributions remain, quietly doing their work. Denisovan DNA is woven into the genomes of people from Melanesia, parts of Southeast Asia and Tibet. In Tibetans, Denisovan-derived genes help with living at high altitudes. They make red blood cells and oxygen use more efficient, helping people survive in thin air. This means that every time a Sherpa guide helps someone climb a Himalayan peak, every time a Tibetan farmer walks across a high plateau carrying heavy loads, they are using an ancient Denisovan gift, a gift passed down through thousands of years from one species to another, across lost families and vanished landscapes. We do not, as far as we know, carry DNA from every extinct human species. The Hobbits, Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis, may have left no genetic trace in modern humans, or their contributions may be too tiny or too hidden for us to detect yet. Homo naledi and Homo erectus are so old and so distant in time that any DNA from them would be extremely hard to identify. But the fact remains, you are not purely Homo sapiens. No one is. You are a mosaic. Inside your cells, there are pieces of stories from other people who are no longer here. When your immune system fights off a virus, when your body handles thin air, when your skin meets sunlight, you may be calling on help from someone who lived 40 or 50 or 100,000 years ago, whose bones now lie in caves and riverbeds. If your eyes want to close for a moment, that is fine, let them. Just imagine this. Every living human is a kind of walking memorial, a living archive. Our bodies carry quiet memories that our conscious minds can never access, but which still shape us in small ways every day. The ghosts are not outside us, haunting the world. They are inside us, in our very blood. Chapter 17, The Ones. We never knew, so far. We have talked about the human species we know. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, Homo luzonensis, Homo naledi, Homo erectus, and a few others we have only touched on, like Homo heidelbergensis, a likely ancestor of both Neanderthals and us. But there is another layer to this story. There may have been more. DNA studies sometimes show traces of ancient lineages that do not match any known fossil species. Patterns in African genomes, for example, hint at possible interbreeding with unknown, archaic humans. Species we have not yet found in the ground, or whose bones we cannot yet clearly classify. The fossil record is patchy. Bones decay, caves collapse, sea levels rise and drown entire coastlines where early humans may have lived. Many regions of the world have barely been explored by archaeologists. New species are still being discovered now. In the 21st century, Homo naledi in 2013, Homo luzonensis in 2019. So when we say, we shared the planet with 8 other human species, we are speaking only of what we know so far. The real number may be higher. There may have been 10, or 12, or 20 branches on the human tree. Some may have flickered into existence for only a short time. Some may have thrived in places we have not yet dug. Some may have left behind teeth and bones that sit unrecognized in museum drawers. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere in a quiet room, in a box on a shelf, there may be a piece of a jaw or a tooth fragment that belongs to an entire lost human species that no one has named yet. A whole people reduced to a small grey object labelled with a date and a catalogue number. The world turns slowly, and so do we. This is not meant to make you sad, though it might. It is meant to open your sense of scale. To remind you that our knowledge is always partial, that the deep past is vast, and we have only touched a few parts of it with our careful, curious hands. Chapter 18. What we lost. When we became alone. By now, your breathing may be slow and regular. Your body might feel heavy on the bed. You might be floating somewhere between listening and drifting. If so, you are exactly where I hoped you would be. In this soft, half-awake place, let us ask a question that is both simple and huge. What did we lose when we became the only humans? We gained a lot, of course. Our species spread across the entire planet. We built cities and ships and satellites. We wrote books and symphonies. We sent machines beyond our solar system. Our cultures exploded into countless forms. But imagine, for a moment, a world where we were not alone. Imagine that, somewhere, in a protected valley in Europe, there was still a small Neanderthal nation. Imagine that, in the high mountains of Asia, Denisovan communities still lived, adapted to thin air in ways we struggle to match. Imagine that on the island of Flores, there was a tiny country of Hobbits, with houses scaled to their size, with tools and art and traditions that had grown for another 50,000 years. We would not just be human anymore. We would be one kind of human among many. We might have to learn new laws, new forms of respect, new ways of saying person that do not assume only one body shape, one face shape, one brain size. We might have had to confront our own tendency to think of ourselves as the centre. We also might have had more mirrors, more ways to see ourselves from the outside. Talking to Neanderthals today, if they existed, would teach us something about what parts of our mind are truly shared and what parts are unique. Do they dream in the same patterns? Do they see beauty in the same things? Do they feel time passing in the same way? Or would their sense of reality be tilted, slightly or greatly, in directions we cannot even name? We lost those conversations before they could happen. We lost whole ways of seeing the world. Of course, it is possible that coexistence in the modern world would have been bitter and dangerous. Our history with our own kind is already full of cruelty. It is easy to imagine a future where other human species would have been oppressed, exploited, or erased by us. We have to be honest about that. But it is also possible to hold a softer wish, a vision where many kinds of human live together under one sky, each with their own languages and arts and sciences, each offering something different to the shared story. That world did not happen. We live instead in a world where we are alone. And because we are alone, we sometimes forget that it could have been any other way. For a moment, just breathe. You can feel, in your own chest, how fragile a single heartbeat is, how delicate a single life. Now imagine all of humanity as one heartbeat, one rhythm. In this entire universe, as far as we know right now, there is only one species that sits awake at night and wonders about the deep past. One species that tells stories about extinct cousins in order to fall asleep. If that is true, and we do not know yet if life or minds exist elsewhere, then our uniqueness is both a gift and a weight. Chapter 19. The weight of being the last. Imagine the night sky above you, wherever you are. Even if you are indoors, you know it is there. A wide bowl of dark with points of light, the same stars early humans saw. Somewhere in that sky might be other minds, other civilizations, other beings asking their own questions about existence. We do not know, but here, on this planet, we are the only human species left. Every time we bulldoze a hill for a road, every time we open a new mine, every time we flood a valley for a dam, we run the risk of erasing the last traces of our cousins. A cave with Neanderthal footprints might become a quarry. A hillside holding Denisovan bones might become a construction site. A site that could have told us more about Homo naledi might be disturbed before anyone knows to dig. We have already lost many sites this way, and yet every year we also discover new ones, because some people have made it their life's work to search carefully, to document, to protect. We are strangely both the destroyers and the archivists of deep time. Being the last human species comes with a choice. We can move through the world as if nothing before us matters, as if history starts with writing, or with cities, or with our own lifetime. Or we can move through the world as if it is full of unseen graves, as if every valley and hill and island might hold the bones of people who never imagined us, but who made our existence possible. It does not mean we cannot build. It does not mean we must freeze in place. It just means we can build with a kind of quiet respect. We can remember that our story is resting on the dust of other stories. The world turns slowly, and so do we. In the next part of this long journey, we will begin to turn more inward. We will talk less about dates and names, and more about what this all means for how we live now. How we think about time, about memory, about our own small lives against the deep backdrop of millions of years. But before we go there, let us stay just a little longer in the space between then and now, between them and us, between being one species among many and being the last. You do not need to decide how you feel about it. It is enough to know that you are part of a story that begins long before your birth and stretches long after your death. A story written in bone and ash and DNA, and in the quiet, sleepy thoughts you are having right now. The world turns slowly, and so do we. As we move slowly to the next part of this story, you can let go of the facts if you want. Dates can fade, names can blur. What remains is a feeling. We were never alone, not at first. We are going to talk about deep time, about how small we are, about how strange and precious it is to be the last humans. Chapter 20, A Clock the Earth. Imagine time as a giant clock, not the one on your wall, but a clock the size of the Earth itself. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. That is 4,567,000 years. A number so large that it almost stops meaning anything. Human-like creatures, hominins, only appear in the last little slice of that story, around 6 million years ago, and our own species, Homo sapiens, has been here for roughly 300,000 years. If you took the entire history of the Earth and compressed it into the length of a football field, from one goal line to the other, then the time when mammals appear would be only in the last yard. Humans would show up in the last 1/8 of an inch, just a few millimeters near the very end. Human civilization, the time of cities and writing, and everything we call history, would be only a line as thin as 2 human hairs at the very edge of that field. Everything we have ever done, the pyramids, the internet, rockets, art, war, peace, all of it, fits into that tiny, tiny line. And inside that line, the moment when we were not alone, when other human species existed alongside us, is even smaller. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Hobbits, Homo naledi. They lived with us only during a narrow part of our already narrow slice. To us it feels huge. Tens of thousands of years. To deep time, it is a brief shimmer, a single breath in a very long night. When we talk about deep time, it is easy to feel lost. But you do not need to hold all the eons and epochs in your mind. All you need is this feeling. You are living in the last few millimeters of a very, very long story. That is not meant to make you feel small in a bad way. It is meant to make your worries soften around the edges. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 21. Tiny lives on a vast timeline. Imagine laying a long, clear strip of glass on the ground. It stretches farther than you can see in either direction. Along this strip are tiny marks, like the marks on a ruler, but these marks do not measure inches or centimeters. They measure years. On one end, 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth is young and hot and violent. No life yet, just rock and fire and water and storms. Further along, life is just beginning. Single cells in the sea, no plants on land, no animals, no trees, no birds. Move further. Plants appear, then fish, then insects, then dinosaurs. They rule for millions of years, then vanish. New animals take their place. Mammals grow. Forests change. Ice ages come and go. Oceans rise and fall. Only very close to where you are standing now. On that glass strip do the first hominins appear. Creatures that are almost like us, but not quite. They walk upright. They use simple tools. They live and die without any idea that, millions of years later, someone like you would be lying in bed, listening to a story about them. Closer still, the first Homo species arrive. Homo habilis, Homo erectus. They spread out of Africa. They learn fire. They shape stone with intention. Closer still, Neanderthals appear in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, Hobbits on their island, Homo naledi in their cave, Homo luzonensis in their forest, and then almost at the very end we arrive, Homo sapiens. We look around, we meet the others, we mix with them, we outlast them. Then, for the last thin segment of the strip, we are alone. Now imagine your own life on that strip of glass. A few decades, maybe 70 years, maybe more, maybe less. Compared to the length of the strip, enforced, your time is thinner than the thinnest line. If you drew it with a pen, the pen stroke would be too thick. It would blur it. You might think this makes your life meaningless. But think of it another way. A short life is like a single, soft note in a long piece of music. The note does not need to be long to be beautiful. It does not need to be loud to matter. It just needs to be part of the pattern. You are part of the pattern. The ex-humans we have been talking about were also short notes. A Neanderthal woman in a cave one winter. A Denisovan child near a mountain stream. A Homo floresiensis hunter in the jungle. Their lives were also brief compared to deep time. They also worried, loved, grieved, laughed in their own ancient ways. They are gone. We are here. One day we will be gone too. Deep time will keep moving, and somehow that is strangely gentle. It means you do not have to carry the world on your shoulders. You are a moment in something enormous. You can breathe. For a moment, just breathe. Chapter 22. The Earth does not belong to us. If you look at the world only from the point of view of now, it is easy to think everything is about us. Our cities, our maps, our borders, our problems, our news. But from the point of view of deep time, humans are a very recent addition. And even within that short human time, our own species is just one of many. Hominins first appear around 6 million years ago. Our genus, Homo, around 2 to 3 million years ago. For much of that stretch, there were multiple kinds of humans sharing the planet. We are not the centre of Earth's story. We are part of it. Some philosophers call this way of thinking biocentrism, seeing humans as one species among many, creatures within the world rather than rulers above it. It suggests that the world is not made for us. The world is made, and we emerged within it, shaped by it, dependent on it. When you realise that even our own family, the human family, has many dead branches, something softens. You see that extinction is not rare. Over 99% of all species that have ever lived on Earth are now extinct. That includes tiny trilobites and huge dinosaurs, strange ancient plants and little shell creatures. It also includes Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and all the rest. We are not outside that pattern. We are inside it. This does not mean we are unimportant. It means we are normal. You, lying here listening to this, are not separate from deep time. You are deep time. Your body is made from atoms that come from stars that burned long before the Earth existed. Your bones are built from minerals that were once part of older rocks. Your blood carries iron that was forged in the core of a dying star billions of years ago. When you walk, the Earth feels its own minerals moving around. When you breathe, the air cycles in and out of lungs that grew from soil and water. You are not on the world, you are of the world. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 23. The Quiet. Company of the Dead. Sometimes when we speak of deep time and extinction, it can feel lonely, as if everything is gone and we are standing alone in a huge empty museum. But if you think a little differently, you might feel something else. Company. Right under your feet. Wherever you are, there are layers of rock. Those rocks hold fossils, shells, leaves, tiny bones, from animals and plants that lived millions of years ago. Most of them are not human. They are fish, corals, insects, tiny sea creatures. But in some places, the bones are human too. Neanderthal bones in caves, Homo erectus skulls in old riverbeds, Denisovan fragments in high mountain caves. When you walk over the ground, you are walking over an invisible crowd. Not a scary crowd, not a haunting in the horror movie sense. Just a quiet presence, a record of all the lives that came before yours layered into the earth like pages in a very thick book. In some parts of the world, scientists can read that book almost like a calendar. Each layer of rock and fossil tells them about a different time. What the climate was like, what kinds of animals were common, what plants grew there. They can see patterns of extinction, times when many species disappeared at once. They can see patterns of recovery, times when new species appeared to fill empty niches. In one chapter of that book, near the very end, are our extinct human cousins. If you could run your fingers across the pages of that book, you would feel their presence as small roughnesses in the layers. A Neanderthal here, a Denisovan there, a Homo floresiensis skull in an island cave. You will never meet them, but they are part of your neighbourhood. Your life is taking place on a planet that holds their remains. Your thoughts are happening in the same air where they once breathed and spoke. For a moment, just breathe and imagine all those other breaths stretching back through deep time. The breath of dinosaurs, the breath of tiny early mammals, the breath of Homo erectus, the breath of Neanderthals. All of it has mixed and remixed in the atmosphere over millions of years. Some of the oxygen you are using right now has probably been inside other creatures before you, inside other humans, inside our extinct cousins. We are all sharing a single, ancient, moving pool of air. There is something very gentle in that idea if you let it settle. Chapter 24. Our strange moment in the Anthropocene. When scientists talk about our current time, Some of them use a special word, the Anthropocene. It means the age of humans. It marks the point where human activity has changed the Earth so much that it shows up clearly in rocks, in ice cores, in the chemistry of the oceans and the air. We have changed the climate. We have moved species around the globe. We have cut down forests and built cities that can be seen from space. We have touched at least 83% of the planet's land surface in some way. We are not just living in deep time. We are now shaping it. If someone, far in the future, were to cut into the rocks of our time, they would see a sharp layer, plastics, chemical traces, sudden changes in fossils, many species disappearing, others spreading everywhere. They would see our mark like a bright, jagged line on the long, smooth strip of Earth's history. In a way, this makes us powerful. In another way, it makes us fragile. Because when you become a force that can change deep time, you also become a force that can end your own story. Other species before us have caused big changes. Plants, when they first evolved photosynthesis, filled the atmosphere with oxygen and changed the climate. Certain ancient microbes may have triggered mass extinctions. Life has always reshaped the planet. What is new about us is how fast we are doing it. We have gone from small groups of hunter-gatherers sharing the Earth with Neanderthals and Denisovans to a global civilization of billions in a tiny sliver of time, less than 0.1% of Earth's history. This sudden speed can be dizzying, but here, in the dark, with your body heavy and your eyes maybe half closed, you do not have to solve the problems of the Anthropocene. You do not have to carry it all. For now, it is enough to know this. Our moment is strange. We are both the last humans and the most powerful ones. We hold in our choices the future of many other species. We can push more branches of life toward extinction, or we can try to let them be. We are a young species with an old responsibility. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 25. Resting inside a moving story, let us bring all of this closer to you. You in your room. You with your phone or your headphones. You with your own small worries and plans and memories. You are part of deep time. But you also have to go to work, or school, or take care of people, or simply get through your days. It is easy to feel torn between the vast, quiet story of the Earth and the small, noisy story of your own life. You do not have to choose between them. You can hold both. When something in your day feels heavy, a mistake, an argument, a fear about the future, you can remember that this is one moment in a very long line. That does not erase the pain, but it can soften it. It can give it space. It can turn a sharp edge into a smoother curve. Think of Neanderthals again for a moment. They also had hard days. They faced hunger, cold, danger. They had to find food. They had to keep children alive. They had to care for sick group members. They did this for hundreds of thousands of years. Then their story ended. To deep time, their hardships are part of a pattern of rise and fall. Your hardships are also part of a pattern. They matter because you feel them. They are real in your body and mind. But they are not forever. They are waves on a deep, deep sea. When you remember that other human species lived, struggled, and vanished, something changes in how you hold your own problems. You might feel a little more tenderness toward yourself, a little more gentleness toward others. We are all brief visitors here. You can imagine that all the extinct humans, Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, Homo naledi, and the rest, are like older siblings who did not make it as far as we did. They tried. They lived the best they could in their time. They passed on what they could, sometimes literally in their DNA, sometimes in the skills they developed, sometimes only in the shape of the tools we later copied. We are not better than them. We are just later. When you lie down to rest, you are doing something every human has always done. You are joining a long line of sleepers stretching back through deep time. People curling up by fires, in caves, in shelters, on skins, on mats, on beds of straw. Our extinct cousins did this too. There is something almost holy in that simple act. Lying down, closing your eyes, letting go for a while. For a moment, just breathe. Chapter 26. Learning to move more slowly. One of the quiet lessons of deep time is slowness. Earth's big changes usually happen over millions of years. Continents drift, mountains rise, oceans open and close, species evolve and vanish. For most of its history, the planet has moved at a pace that is almost beyond our ability to feel. We, on the other hand, live very fast. We scroll, we click, we jump from one idea to another in seconds. Our phones light up with news from all over the world every minute. We get used to thinking that everything important happens quickly, but the story we have been telling tonight did not happen quickly. Homo erectus did not rush. They walked slowly across continents over hundreds of thousands of years. Neanderthals did not appear and vanish in a century. Their presence in Europe lasted roughly 400,000 years. Homo naledi placed bodies. If that is what they were doing, in dark caves over long stretches of time, deep time is patient. When you remember this, you might feel invited to move a little more slowly in your own life. Not always. You still have responsibilities, alarms, schedules, but sometimes, like now, you can step into a slower stream. You can take a breath that takes a full count of 4 to arrive and a full count of 4 to leave. You can notice that even your heartbeat, which feels fast compared to mountains, is slow compared to a thought. The world turns slowly, and so do we. You do not need to change your entire life. You do not need to suddenly live like a hunter-gatherer or move into a cave. You can simply remember that slowness is still inside you, that your body is more ancient than your calendar, that it responds to calm and quiet, the way it has for hundreds of thousands of years. Long before there were phones or screens, the human nervous system learned to settle by watching firelight, by listening to soft voices at night, by feeling safe in a group. That is what we are trying to recreate here in this script. A modern version of a very old scene. Many humans, one fire, stories in the dark. Some of those humans long ago were Neanderthals. Some were Denisovans. Some were other species we have not yet named. Now the storyteller is just another Homo sapiens, talking to you through a machine, but the feeling is the same. Stories as a bridge between minds. Stories as a way to feel less alone. Stories as a way to fall asleep. Chapter 27. The gentle weight of responsibility. As the last surviving human species, we carry something our cousins never did. The ability to understand deep time and to act on that understanding. Neanderthals did not know they were the end of their branch. Denisovans did not know their DNA would live on inside future people from distant lands. Homo floresiensis did not know that their tiny skeletons would one day be carefully measured and scanned by scientists on the other side of the world. We know. We can look back and see the whole arc of our family's story. As far as we have uncovered it, we can see how many species have vanished. We can see how fragile survival is. We can see how easily we could join them if we are careless with our own future. This knowledge is heavy, but it can also be kind. Knowing that we are part of something so large can make us more humble. It can make us less harsh with each other. It can remind us that every person we meet is carrying millions of years of evolution inside them. An unbroken chain of survival that stretches back to the very first life on Earth. When someone annoys you, you can remember. They are also a miracle of deep time. So are you. When you feel like your life does not matter, you can remember. It matters in at least 2 ways. It matters because you feel it. Your joys and pains are real in your nervous system, and it matters because you are a small part of the long, unfolding story of life on this planet. When you choose kindness, you are adding a different kind of mark to deep time. Not a mark in rock or bone, but a mark in the web of human experience. Our extinct cousins left us their bones, their tools, their DNA. We, if we last, will leave bones and tools and DNA as well, but also music, art, archives, and maybe, if we are lucky, a planet that is still rich in wildlife. The choice is ongoing. It is made in big policies and small daily decisions. You do not have to fix everything. You can simply do your small part, in your small circle, while remembering that you are standing on the shoulders of many who did not get this chance. The world turns slowly, and so do we. If you are lying down, you do not need to move. If your eyes are already closed, you do not need to open them. If the phone screen is still on, you do not have to look at it. You can simply listen, the way people once listened around fires. In the long nights before history, we will move like waves in shallow water, soft, repeating, fading. Chapter 28. A night over all of time. Imagine that above you the ceiling is gone. Instead, there is only sky. Not the sky of one place, but all the skies that have ever been. Blue noon skies above savannas where early hominins walked. Wide grey skies over Neanderthal valleys. Thick, wet cloud skies over island forests where hobbits hunted tiny elephants. Thin, bright skies over icy plateaus where Denisovans watched the wind carve snow. All of those skies are stacked above you now, layer on layer, like sheets of soft glass. You lie there, small and warm under all of them. You can almost feel their weight, not heavy in a painful way, but heavy like a very thick blanket. The weight of 4.5 billion years of Earth. The weight of all the lives that have come and gone. The weight of every footprint ever left in mud or snow, now turned to stone or lost to rain. You do not have to hold any of the details. You do not have to count the years. Just feel this. You are resting inside a story that began long before you, and will continue long after you. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 29. A single fire in a long chain now. Imagine a string of fires stretching away from you in both directions, vanishing into darkness. Closest to you is a small, modern light, a phone screen, a lamp, the glow of a city outside your window. This is your fire, your time. Behind it, a little further away, are other fires. Campfires in cities, candles in houses, torches in stone streets. Fires in early villages where grain dries and pots bubble and children sleep nearby. These belong to people whose names we still know from history. Farmers, traders, sailors, scribes. They are close enough that you can almost imagine their faces. Further back, the fires change. They move into caves, into open plains, into forests. They belong to people with no written names, but with lives just as real. They belong to early Homo sapiens, sitting around flames, telling stories in languages we will never hear. Their shadows moving across stone walls. Further still, the fires sit under low cave roofs and under rocky overhangs. Neanderthals keep them alive in long winters. They add wood with thick hands, lean close with heavy-browed faces, eyes reflecting the flames. Their children stare into the light the way children always do. Further still, the fires are in high mountain caves, where Denisovans live. The air is thin. Outside, the stars are sharp and close. Inside, breath and smoke mix. Their faces are half glimpsed in our imagination, reconstructed from a few bones and strands of DNA. But the warmth of their fire is not hard to feel. Further along the chain, small fires flicker at the mouths of caves in island jungles, where tiny Homo floresiensis people move like shadows between tree trunks. Their flames reflect off wet leaves and the eyes of strange animals. Further still, the fires are new, awkward, tender. Homo erectus stands near them, learning how close they can get, how to feed the flames, how to carry embers from place to place. The fires go out often. They must be restarted with patience and effort, but over time, more and more fires survive the night. If you follow the chain all the way back, eventually there are no fires. Only dark, and yet in that dark the world still turns. Winds still blow, stars still rise, oceans still move. You here are another link in that chain. The light you are looking at or hearing this through is just a new shape of the same old human desire to push back the dark a little, to make a circle of warmth, to sit together inside that circle and share something. Maybe a meal, maybe a story, maybe tonight a slow path into sleep. You do not have to try. You are already part of the chain. Chapter 30, The Soft Edges of Meaning. When we talk about deep time, some people feel very small, in a frightening way. They think, if the universe is so big, if the Earth is so old, if humans are only a tiny recent flicker, then maybe nothing we do matters. But there is another way to feel small. You can feel small the way a single note in a song is small. It is not the whole song, it is not the whole melody, but if you took it away, the song would be different. The note changes the shape of everything around it. Your life is like that note, short, gentle, easily overlooked from far away. But up close, in the circle of people you touch, you change the pattern. Think of all the small things that have changed your own story. A kind word from someone at the right time. A teacher who believed in you. A friend who listened. A stranger who smiled when you needed it. These are small acts. They do not show up in geology or in deep time charts. There is no layer of rock that says, here is where someone gave you a moment of kindness. But for you, they are everything. Being human is not only about the big, world-changing events. It is also about the daily, quiet acts of care that almost no one else sees. Those acts existed in every human species. Neanderthals cared for their injured. Someone fed them. Someone carried them. Denisovans passed down genes that still help hearts and lungs today. Early Homo sapiens taught their children how to find plants and water, and how not to get lost. We do not know their names, but their gentle acts echo into us. When you choose to be gentle with yourself, or someone else, you are continuing something ancient. You are writing a very small note into a very long song. You are adding softness to deep time. And in the end, what else can we really do? Chapter 31. A walk through the forest of before. Imagine now that you are walking in a dream through a forest that is not one forest but all forests. The trees around you keep changing as you move. For a few steps, you are in a modern forest with species you recognize. Then, without any sharp line, the trees shift into older forms. Strange ferns, giant horsetails, glossy leaves from plants that no longer exist. The air smells a little different with each step. Between the trees you see movement. At first it is animals you know, deer, birds, maybe a fox slipping through undergrowth. As you walk further, the animals change. You glimpse mammoths between the trunks, their huge shapes quiet as they move. Woolly rhinoceroses brush against ancient pines. Big cats with longer teeth than any alive today sit in the shadows, watching. Further still, the animals are stranger. Heavy reptiles from before the mammals rose, creatures from seas that no longer cover this ground. And then, further back, nothing but plants and insects, the buzz of wings and the slow sway of giant fronds. Among all these scenes are people. In one clearing, a group of Homo sapiens laugh around a fire, their faces painted. In another, Neanderthals quietly prepare a meal, the steam from cooked meat rising into cold air. In another, small hobbits move through thick undergrowth, their feet sure on damp ground. In a narrow ravine, Denisovans carry wood up toward a high cave, deep in a crack in the earth. Homo naledi hands and feet press against rock as they make their way into a chamber of darkness. Further back, the forms blur a little, early Homo species, walking upright but with more ape-like bodies, carrying simple stone tools. And then finally you come to a place where there are no humans at all. Just trees, just animals, just wind. You stand there for a while in that pre-human forest. It is not empty. It is full of life. Birds calling, leaves shifting, insects singing, water moving. But there is no one here wondering what it means. No one naming things. No one telling stories. You feel, in your chest, the difference your own awareness makes. You are not better than this forest. You are not above it, but you are a new thing within it. A creature who can look at the world and ask, what is this? Why am I here? How does it feel to be alive? Consciousness is not a fact you can see in bones. It is an inner experience. All human species may have had some form of it. We know for sure that we do. And right now your consciousness is walking through a dream of time and trees. And that too is part of deep time. The forest around you slowly grows quiet. The animals become still. The light softens. You turn around and walk back the way you came, past Neanderthals and Denisovans and Hobbits and ancient mammals and ferns, and finally into the forest you know, with the smells you recognize. Then you step out of the forest and back into your room. You lie down again. Chapter 32. A small, warm room in an old universe. Now picture your room as if you are seeing it from very, very far away. From the ceiling, from the roof, from the sky, from the edge of the atmosphere. The city or town or countryside around you becomes very small. Roads are lines, cars are dots, people are tiny moving points. The planet curves gently, clouds swirl, the night side is pricked with lights. Further away, the earth is a blue and white ball. Further still, just a pale point. Somewhere on that tiny point, you are lying in a room, listening to a story about other humans who once lived here. From the point of view of the universe, your room is almost nothing. From the point of view of your own nervous system, your room is everything right now. It is the limit of your senses. The softness of the bed, the coolness or warmth of the air, the faint sounds, the weight of your own body. Both views are true. You do not have to choose between them. You can drift between feeling huge and feeling tiny, the way waves move in and out on a shore. When you feel overwhelmed by your own life, it can help to zoom out, to remember deep time and distant stars. When you feel lost in the bigness of everything, it can help to zoom in, to remember the feeling of a blanket against your skin, the sound of your own breath. You are allowed to move between those views as often as you need. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 33. Quiet Companions. We have spoken often of how we are the last human species. That can sound lonely. But in a strange way we are surrounded. We are surrounded by the traces of those who came before. By their bones in the ground, by their genes in our blood, by their tools in museums, by their shadows in our stories and artworks and thoughts. Every time you see an image of a reconstructed Neanderthal face, every time you hear about a new fossil found in a cave, every time someone tells a story about ancient humans, you are touching them in a small way. You can choose to treat them not as curiosities, but as quiet companions, like older relatives whose photographs sit in a family album, even if you never met them. They do not watch you. They do not judge you. They are gone. But the knowledge of them stays. The awareness that we once shared this planet with them stays. And if you let it, that awareness can sit beside you, softly like a calm friend, who makes you feel less alone in time. You can imagine that when you lie down, they lie down too, in all their different sleeping places, across all their different ages, Neanderthals curling up by embers, Denisovans resting in high caves, Hobbits sleeping in jungle shelters, Homo naledi still in the deep dark of their caves, Homo erectus under wide, starry skies, and now you in your room, one long line of sleepers, breathing in and out, one after another, through millions of years. You are not the only one who has ever needed rest. You are not the only one who has ever felt tired and small under a big sky. You are part of a very old pattern. Chapter 34. Letting go of the day now, we move away from them, gently. We let their names fade. We let their bones sink back into quiet caves. We let their fires burn down to ash. We turn back toward you. Your day, whatever it was, is behind you. Now, there were things you did well, things you wish you had done differently. Moments that felt sharp, moments that felt dull. You do not have to sort them all out right now. The earth does not ask you to carry every memory into sleep. It does not ask you to solve every problem before you can rest. Even in deep time, nothing is ever fully finished. Continents are always drifting. Mountains are always wearing down. Evolution is always happening. There is no final perfect state. You are allowed to be unfinished too. You can picture your thoughts as leaves floating on a slow river. Some are heavy with dark colours. Some are bright. Some are just small and plain. One by one you can let them drift past you down the river, out of sight. You do not need to push them away. You do not need to cling to them. Just watch them move. If one thought keeps coming back, something you regret, or fear, or long for, you can imagine placing it very gently on the shore of this river. You can say silently, "I will come back to you later." And for now, you just let the water surface be smooth. For a moment, just breathe. Feel the air coming into your nose or mouth. Feel it leaving. That is enough. You are alive. That is enough. Chapter 35. A soft fade. Into nothing. In particular, we are reaching the part of the story where words matter less, and the spaces between them matter more. From here, the ideas will thin out, like mist lifting off a field at dawn. Except we are going toward night, not morning. You can imagine the sentences themselves getting softer, less sharp around the edges. You do not have to follow everyone. You can let your attention drift. If you lose the thread, there is no problem. There is nothing important you have to remember after this ends. Think of a shoreline where waves come in, then slide back again and again. Each wave is a small thought, a memory, a picture, a feeling. They arrive, they touch the sand, they fade, the sand remains. In this image, you are not the waves, you are the sand. Thoughts and feelings and stories flow over you. They shape you a little for a time. Then they go. New ones come, but underneath there is something steady and quiet and simple. Just being here, existing, breathing. Tonight we have covered many waves, names of species, numbers of years, images of forests and caves and islands. They have washed over you. Some may stay, most will fade. Underneath them, you are still here. You, a brief human, on an old planet, under old stars. Breathing. The world turns slowly, and so do we. You do not need to do anything else. You do not need to reach any conclusion about deep time or human meaning. You do not need to decide how you feel about extinction or the future. All of that can wait. Right now, your only task is to be where you are. To let your body grow heavier. To let your thoughts grow lighter. If sleep comes, it will come on its own. You do not have to chase it. You do not have to force it. You can simply lie there, listening to the last hints of this story, as they fade into quieter and quieter sounds. Thank you for staying with me through caves and ice and long-forgotten fires. Thank you for letting your mind just stretch out over hundreds of thousands of years, and then gently fold back into this small, warm room. You are safe here. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to fall, slowly, softly, into sleep, and leave the story to turn without you for a while. The world will keep turning, the deep time will keep flowing. The other humans will stay in the past, and you, for now, can simply drift away. Good night, sleep well,